Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live, and it is a Tuesday, so we are choosing health and we are choosing wellness. And who better to choose health and wellness with than with our resident wellness expert, Mr. Ronald Abvajee. Now, you might have heard some bits and pieces from our intro today, but today we will be talking about the importance of boosting our immunity and staying healthy. Now, you know, with a conversation from Ronald, you can always look forward to tips and tricks on how to stay healthy, but we know that with the changes in season, a lot of people who have allergy problems will be struggling, and a lot of people, when it comes to changes in the season, they start to get colds and flus, especially since we are going into winter and we are coming out of the month of Ramadan. As Mulana alluded to earlier, we are in a stage where we are sleep deprived, we've been fasting, our immune systems are slightly compromised from the sleep deprivation. So we're going to be talking about all things health and well-being and how you can boost your immunity before we hit winter. But without any further ado, Assalamu alaikum, Ronald. Thank you for joining us on Prime Live.
Wa alaikum salam. And Tuesday and every day is a day for wellness.
Exactly.
Not just a Tuesday.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And as we are growing and learning and becoming a lot more woke when it comes to taking charge of our health and wellness journeys, I want to start off our conversation about what impact does our immunity make in terms of our overall health and well-being, and talk to us about those fluctuations in immunity that we tend to see in the times of change of season, which we are soon approaching.
Many people view immunity as this shield that you put it up and it stays up, whereas the reality, it's actually a fluid system. So you find that in the different seasons, and it's easy to look at seasons, the different seasons, your immunity levels and your body's ability to maximize its immunity fluctuates. So when you look at spring, you find that you're coming out of a downward spiral in immunity, and it suddenly boosts up. And there's particular reasons for that. You mentioned earlier sleep. So sleep, weather, temperature, humidity, daylight, all impact your immunity. And let's not forget stress. So those are the 5 key things that we look at that impact your immunity and cause these fluctuations to happen. And that's just the body's amazing ability to adapt to different seasons. And just like when you do one type of behavior, you've got to be aware of everything else. Never assume your immunity is always at 100%. Always assume that you need to work on it every day with your behaviors, actions, and what you're consuming and doing to maximize it.
And in our word for 2025, it's all about mindfulness and being mindful of the changes and the natural changes your body will go through during the different times of the year. Now, we've talked about pills and potions on our segment for the longest time, and how any kind of drug company is trying to sell you pills and potions. And I have seen many, an immune booster, effervescence, to tablets, to this and that on the shelves. But when it comes to maintaining a good immune system and staying strong and healthy, what are the biggest things you would like our audience to take away or to remember when it comes to staying strong, having a good immune system, and maintaining overall well-being while we are going through this fluctuating changes in the seasons?
So what happens to the body in these fluctuations? So one is, as we enter colder seasons, because the 2 dips in our immune system is literally in autumn and just after winter, the 2 big season changes. Now, what happens with temperature? Temperature decreases. What does that mean? That the blood vessels go through vasoconstriction, so they narrow, which means your immune cells, the immune response cannot travel as effectively and efficiently as what it should be, because the body is naturally trying to keep warm, especially on the core of the body, so it vasoconstricts. The second thing is daylight, and lack of movement. Winter. How many of us actually go out for walks when it's 3 degrees outside or spend time outside? Very few. And we know that not being outside and not moving impacts vitamin D. And vitamin D is essential to maintaining a fantastic functionality of your immune system. So your vitamin D decreases during winter. You then look at it from sleep. And yes, because your sleep could be interrupted, because ideally you should be in a cool room. What happens in winter? Electric blankets, hot water bottles, heaters. So the room's naturally very hot. So you might be cozy, but your sleep is not as efficient or effective as what it should be, which means there's a further decline in the potential of your immune system functioning optimally. And then stress. When cortisol increase, increases, your immune system does go down because you tend to eat junk and not live a healthy lifestyle. So what can we do? One is pills, powders, and potions. I heard the adverts already, but I do know that allergens in the air do impact some, and for those that have autoimmune diseases or other conditions, please follow what your doctor has prescribed and stick to that. But you are in control of the following. One is movement. When you move, you maintain an ideal metabolism, so that's fantastic to do. The next thing that you look at is what you're consuming and eating. And there are particular immune boosting foods that we should be aware of. Things like your garlic, and garlic has got, yes, I know, it often is very pungent.
I'm 90% garlic.
So that's okay.
I don't mind the
So
garlic.
garlic and ginger, antimicrobial properties and antibacterial properties. You look at anti-inflammatory foods. You're looking at your citrus, and of course you're looking at increasing your zinc intake, and of course with your proteins, lentils, lean meats, etc. But in winter, when seasons get colder, I notice a lot of people tend to have hot chocolates with cream and extra chocolate and so forth. So we are not having healthier foods, and they're high sugary foods. And then ultimately, what we need to become aware of is hydration, because we tend to neglect hydration because we assume we're having teas and coffees and hot chocolates. These are some of the behaviors that we should look at, and ultimately manage your stress. So mindfulness becomes even more important, because when you become mindful and you are in stressful situations, focus on your breathing, focus on other habits to decrease the impact of the stress, and that'll help boost your immune system.
Now let's also talk about a post-Ramadan context. A lot of us are sleep deprived, staying up late at night to either read Quran or staying up late for Taraweeh. And of course, a lot of us are not used to waking up in the early hours of the morning to eat suhoor. Now we're coming out of Ramadan, and it's now a complete shift again. We're not fasting anymore. Maybe the late nights have gone away. When it comes to a post-Ramadan recovery, I want to call it, what are the best steps to take? And I can't ask that question without talking about the flu vaccine, which is often encouraged, particularly for this change in season going into what we know as flu season or winter.
So when you look at a vaccine we know is a dose of that particular strain of that virus. And what happens is that it doesn't make you sick. It could, you could feel a little bit under the weather, but it doesn't give you the full-blown virus. What it does do is elicit an immune response in the body. So your body can produce the antibodies to fight it before it gets too severe or too serious. Now a vaccine, even the flu vaccine, I must just say to people, you might still get the flu, but it will not be as severe. And this is what we know with a lot of the vaccines that tackle the influenza viruses and the types of the different types of influenza viruses. Last year, we know there were 4 strains of the flu virus. And how do we know the strains? How do they do the vaccines? The northern hemisphere is coming out of winter. So that often travels down to us so that we mimic what they have done and what the strain is. But if you go for a flu vac, it's either a 2-strain or a 3-strain vaccine, and it's a luck of a lottery on which strain you're going to get. But if you have those 3 strains, protected against those 3 with the vaccine, you're going to be in good stead. Ronald Abvajee, and I'll say this publicly, goes for his flu vaccine every year. I do not waver. I do not want to ask you questions. That's what I go for. That, coupled with every other lifestyle behavior, becomes key. Now, post-Ramadan, what we need to be aware of is the following. Eating habits have changed. Now, did you know that intermittent fasting is not detrimental to your immune system? Intermittent fasting in the month of Ramadan in particular, with unhealthy nutrition, is not good for your immune system. Sugary laden foods in the morning and the evening means your immune system is going to be compromised. When you have nutritious food, when you're having high zinc, high proteins, folic acids, etc., you actually boost your immune system during the month of Ramadan. After Ramadan, get back into a sleep habit as quickly as what you can. Sleep hygiene becomes critical. Put the phones down and stop scrolling the social medias. Get back into not bombarding yourself with sugary and processed foods, but gradually increasing nutrition during waking hours. Do not forget hydration. And finally, as the weather gets colder, you can always go for anti-inflammatory warm foods. So my favorite in Ramadan, and I search for it throughout the year, is halim, because that's one of my favorite that's got high immune boosting foods.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so important. What you mentioned is that we all strive to make good habits in Ramadan. we all strive to pick up good habits. So it's almost kind of allowing those good habits to fall out of Ramadan as well and continue on those healthy habits that we were trying so hard to establish in the month of Ramadan and then carrying them over. But it wouldn't be a wellness day in the month of March without us talking about an awareness month. I mean, we spoke about the importance of endometriosis awareness month, which is the month of March, but it is also tuberculosis awareness month as well. And we know that it is a preventable illness if early detected, and it affects thousands of people across South Africa. But we know that there are a lot of challenges in terms of accessibility to the kind of healthcare and the kind of treatment that is required for treatment of tuberculosis or even diagnosis. They can also, like we had in conversations yesterday, there can be a lot of stigmas as well attached to someone who could be diagnosed with tuberculosis. Ronald, from your opinion, what is the most important message you would like our viewers to take away from Tuberculosis Awareness Month?
When you say Tuberculosis Month or TB Awareness Month, some people might say, what? TB? In this day and this time, in our community, in my family, in my school, in my workplace? No, this is a disease, for outlying and poorer areas, poverty-stricken areas. No, it does not discriminate from color, creed, race, gender, size, no size. It doesn't discriminate. It's an airborne disease, as we know, and often it's a disease of the ignored, because we assume that a cough is just a cough, and it lasts for 2 weeks. It's just something scratching my throat. The reality is that you need to face what it is, and it's not good, not bad, not right, not wrong. And we look at it very judgmentally, like, oh, what did you do to get TB? Same like in COVID. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, what did you do that you got COVID? Guess what? Most people got COVID. And a lot of people are susceptible to TB, especially with those that are immune compromised, but also during this seasonal change, which is why the immune talk and boosting our immune system is so critical. But the signs and symptoms are there, and it does not discriminate from wealthy areas to poorer areas. It is anyone can be impacted and affected. And the reality is this: is in 2023, the stats in South Africa showed that 260,000 people, all right, were impacted by TB. And of that, you ask yourself, how much of that could have been prevented? Yeah. And the secret to TB is to stick to your medication regime, even though you might feel better, because your body will build up resistance, and you could get infected again. And the last thing is, if a family member or a friend has got TB, you need to become very wise and communicate to not create more stress so it lingers, but also that you can protect those in the home to the best of your ability, especially during the infectious period.
Ronald, thank you so much for your insightful input regarding TB Awareness Month. I think what you've shared is very insightful, and we have to all be mindful about our health, our well-being, and of course get tested if we have that cough that is not going away, if we have any of the signs and symptoms. Very, very important that we go and get tested and make sure that we are contributing positively to the community and to the outlying communities who need that support, for whether it is, we talked about it yesterday, the importance of that it's not just getting access to those medications, but the whole process of getting there sometimes can be particularly challenging, getting the transport to get there, being able to get the medication. It's a whole system that is designed to fail South Africans. But I'm hoping that, as we go forward and as TB Awareness Month goes forward, we can continue on these important conversations for a very preventable illness by creating some much needed awareness. But Ronald, thank you so much for joining us tonight, talking about immunity, tuberculosis, and the importance of continuing to be mindful.
Absolutely, always a pleasure.
Viewers at home, that was our resident wellness expert, Mr. Ronald Abvajee. I hope you took away a lot of tips and information from our conversation today when it comes to keeping a strong and healthy immune system, the kind of foods that will get you there, and also maintaining that healthy lifestyle post-Ramadan. All the healthy habits that you have picked up in Ramadan, absolutely do take them out of Ramadan as well, and do continue on with them. And to anyone out there who is suffering from TB or has a family member or friend, we absolutely send all our love and all our blessings to you. And remember, guys, make sure you go and get tested. Even if it is a little cough, a pestering cough that's not going away, make sure you go and get tested. This is a very, very preventable illness and ailment. But on that note, do engage with us on our social media platforms and let us know if you have any questions or comments to share with us. But on that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll come right back.